Thank you, Ty. My name is Trenton. I'm an alcoholic. That's actually a compliment in AA. One of the less questionable guys. Yeah, I appreciate it. Oh, it's good to be here tonight. It's always an honor and a privilege to participate in the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I want to thank my buddy Ty for the invitation. And this meeting just holds a special place in my heart. It was really, really important to me during the lockdown period. I was on here every day, and we developed a little family in here, and it saved me. It saved me, and I'm really grateful for this group. And I'm glad to see it's still going. So yeah, it's really good. And if you're new, welcome. Welcome to this life-saving, life-changing place. I always love to see the Puente House people. Good to see you guys. A little shout out to you. And I have a lot of friends on here tonight, and it's, of course, great to see your faces. So yeah, let me give you the stats. I'll start with that. I've got a sponsor, Dan D from Beaumont. I've got a home group, which is the Inland Group. We meet tonight, Monday nights at 7:30 in Redlands. If you're ever in the area, we'd love to have you. And then last but not least, on October 4th, 2006, I was given the greatest gift that a guy like me could ever hope for. And that's, of course, my sobriety date. By no means is that my first sobriety date, but I pray to God that it's my last. So I'm asked to share in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like today. I'll do my best to do that. I come from a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was about 2 months old, and raised in the trailer park. Any other trailer park kids out there? All right, I saw one hand. I'm not alone. It's funny. I always ask that. I always do that just to see how many of my people are in the room. I spoke at a roundup in Ridgecrest that Carl sent me to a few months ago, and I asked that question, and almost everybody in the room raised their hand. Everybody was from the trailer park. And like 2 weeks before that, I had spoken in Beverly Hills, and I asked that question. Not a single hand. Nobody. Yeah, but I grew up in this trailer park, and I always had that sense of, the book in our literature talks about anxious apartness, just this deep sense of loneliness. I could be in a room full of people, and I felt all alone. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why I have that, but I always felt that as far back as I can remember. And I looked around, and it seemed like everybody else had a mom and a dad, and I just had a mom, and other people had nicer shoes and nicer clothes and better houses, and I just felt cheated, and I was angry, and I didn't have the description at the time, but looking back on it now, since I've read the big book, restless, irritable, and discontented. That is a very good description of how I felt. Easily agitated, always restless, just never comfortable, and for a long time I would tell you that to explain away the question you were asking me, which was, what is wrong with you? Why do you drink like that? And I really thought it was for those reasons that I drank like that. Like, if you grew up in the trailer park, if you grew up without a dad, if you had my life, you drink too, and today I don't tell you that for that reason. I tell you because when I was 13 years old, I found the solution to all those problems. And I found that first drink. And for me, it was like drinking. I don't even have a word that really describes. It was magic. It was like magic. The book says that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I don't like the effect produced by alcohol. I am in love with the effect produced by alcohol. It solved every problem I'd ever had. It solved problems I didn't know I had. And it was the best feeling I'd ever had in my whole life. And so from the age of 13, I was not one of those people that started off socially drinking and crossed an invisible line. Like, from that first night, from the gate, I wanted more. I just want more. And I couldn't get enough. And, prior to that, I tried to be a good kid. I did okay in school. I followed the rules. I came home when the streetlights came on. I tried to do good. And I don't know, man, when I had that first drink, everything changed. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about rules. All I cared about was getting to that next drink. And looking back on it, there were times I would drink things like vanilla extract, mouthwash, cough syrup, you name it. I drank it. If it would give me that sense of ease and comfort, I drank it. I remember being like 13, 14 years old, standing in my bathroom, drinking shots of NyQuil, chasing it with Listerine. Not exactly social drinking. Some people call that desperation. I call it happy hour. It worked, man. It worked. And right away, my mom, this single mom that I had, she's coming home and finding me passed out on the couch on a daily basis at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, drunk and, not going to school and just getting into trouble. And so, of course, she's concerned and she's trying to get me to go to treatment, telling me I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, I'm 13. I don't even think it's possible. I'm 14 years old, 15 years old, just fighting with her about this. And in my mind, she's a drama queen. She raised a couple of girls. She doesn't know what it's like to raise a boy, and this is just what boys do. And I continued to drink. And it's funny. That's how I felt then. And since then, now as a father, I've raised kids, and I cannot imagine. I literally cannot imagine going through what I put my mom through. I really cannot imagine it. So, I said this wasn't my first sobriety date. I was first introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 17 years old, just about a couple weeks before my 17th birthday. And what specifically was going on at the time, I had gotten kicked out of my high school for drinking Boone's Farm out of my locker one too many times. And I'd had a couple of girlfriends break up with me, and the only thing they said is, every time I see you, you're drunk, and they didn't like the way that I drank. So on the high school thing, I went to school with the same kids since kindergarten. I was looking forward to that day that I would walk that stage and get my diploma with these kids that I've known my whole life. And I've traded it for a drink. These girls that I liked, I liked these girls. But already at that age, if you got between me and a drink, then you got to go. And I gave those relationships up. And I'd had a couple of run-ins with the law and just getting in trouble, left and right, getting in trouble. And so on this Saturday morning, just before my 17th birthday, I had taken my mom's car out. I'd been drinking all morning, and I wrecked her car. And I thought, well, maybe this is a good time to take mom up on that offer to go to treatment. I mean, was I sick and tired of being sick and tired, or did I think I was bodily and mentally different from my fellows? None of that. I didn't know how else to get the heat off. So I went home and I said, Mom, you're right. I need help. And I was checked into an adolescent treatment program at Redlands Hospital that night and introduced to kids that were like me, that were doing the things I was doing. And, at that early stage of my drinking, you put me in a hospital environment. You locked me up with these other people like me, and I was able to stop. I was able to stop pretty easy. Like, I never drank with success, but just being early in my, at that young age and hadn't been drinking too long, I was able to stop. And right away, I'm tricked into believing that I've solved the problem now, and within a few days in that treatment center, they put us in those white vans and hauled us off to come and meet you. And I am so glad they did that. I'm incredibly grateful that they did that. I didn't realize it then. Unfortunately, I had a lot of years of drinking ahead of me, but I started hearing the music. I started hearing the music in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started relating just a little bit. Like, there was more about your stories that I didn't relate to. I hadn't had a wife to lose. I hadn't lost a business. I hadn't been to prison. I hadn't done any of those things that I seem to hear people talk about. But just a little bit, I started relating. And then, over the years, as my alcoholism progressed, I always knew where to come back to. And those people, I always like to say this because those people were very kind to me. I hear a lot of people talk about their experience almost in a bragging way, like people would tell them to sit down and shut up and take the cotton out of their ears and put it in their mouth, and just, I don't know, just thumping them on the chest that was never my experience. They were always kind to me. I would share at every meeting. I had some words of wisdom that I had to share at every participation meeting. First guy with his hand up, sharing complete nonsense. They had no clue what I was talking about, but they would just let me ramble on, and they would tell me to keep coming back. And that's important for me because I always knew where to come back to. So anyway, while I was in that treatment center, they gave us a lot of suggestions, and I know you've all heard them, get a book, get a sponsor, work the steps. My personal favorite, no relationships in the first year. I'm 53. I'm still not listening to that nonsense. And at 17, I was just like, you could just kill me now. you've taken away the booze and now the girls, you can just, that's it. You can kill me now. And so, of course, within about 30 days, I met the girl that was to become my wife, and we fell crazy in love, man. We were young, and I just never had a relationship like that. We had a relationship like I've only seen in the movies. And the story with her, she wasn't an alcoholic. She didn't drink. Her dad was an alcoholic, and she wanted nothing to do with drinking. And here I am, this sober guy, and we just fell crazy in love, inseparable. So much so that within a couple of months, she informed me I was going to be a dad. So now I'm newly sober, 17, baby on the way. And so, I just thought, you know what, we're going to get married and have this baby and live happily ever after. And that was absolutely my plan. I mean, I can tell you with 100%, that was my plan. That's what we were going to do. And we did get married, and I worked really hard, and our daughter was born. And now I don't really have time to come back to meetings. I think the problem's solved. I don't drink anymore. I'm not really struggling with it. I'm happy with this life that I've got now. I've got this young wife and daughter, and I got to support this family, and that's where my focus is. And so I was sober about a year, maybe 13, 14 months. I'm not sure. And I went to work one day, and somewhere between work and home, I'm drunk. I never planned it. I never saw it coming, and I'm drunk. And I got home, and that's not what this young wife of mine signed up for. And she's, of course, scared to death. And within a couple of days, the family car's sitting in an impound lot because I got a DUI. My job is gone, and I'm disappearing for 2 or 3 days at a time, because that's what happens when I take a drink. I don't set out to do that. I don't set out to do any of those things, but that's what happens when I take a drink. And I'm not sure how long it was. I think I drank for about 3 months. All I know is I drank right up until I thought she was going to leave me. And when I thought she was going to leave, I ran back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that would start a cycle that for the next 18 years, I would go in and out of the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, dying from alcoholism, and didn't even know I had it. Like, I always had this idea. There was a guy that lived behind the liquor store by my house. He drank out of a paper sack. I could see that guy was an alcoholic. I saw alcoholics over the years. It just wasn't me. I just couldn't. I just thought, man, I just need to figure out how to control and enjoy it, or maybe stop. But I just couldn't see that I was bodily and mentally different. I certainly didn't need to have some sponsored rule in my life or work the steps or do all this stuff that I heard people talking about. And, over those 18 years, there were times I would always whenever I would come back to AA, it was because I got another DUI or my job's on the line or something. So, of course, we don't get here on a winning streak. So I'd come back to clean up that mess, whatever it was. And, as it progressed and got worse, there were times I think, well, they talk about the answers being in this book. So I had a big book. I'd had a big book since 1987. And I'd crack it open and I think I'm going to look for the answers. And I'm not doing that with a sponsor because I don't have a sponsor. But I open this book and I start reading and I got this court case pending and I got my job's on the line. She's threatening to leave. And I start reading and it's talking about this, Winchester Cathedral and Hampshire Grenadier, something about a doggerel. I don't even know what the hell a doggerel is. And it certainly isn't going to fix all these problems I got. And then I flip a few pages and it's, gee, ma, ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing. I'm like, what? How is this going to fix my problems? And I would shut the book and I'm done with it. It's not going to fix my problems. And it's funny that, later when I came back here in 2006 and hopeless and desperate and in that place where I was willing to do whatever I had to do to not see that look in my kids' eyes ever again. And I cracked open that same book, and this time I did it with a sponsor. And just before it talks about Gee Ma, ain't it grand, it's talking about the alcoholic being like a tornado roaring through the lives of others. Now that one makes some sense to me. And where it talks about seldom mildly intoxicated, but usually more or less insanely drunk. I am insanely drunk all the time. I drink to go out drinking, and then I close the bar down, and then I can barely walk. I can't hardly talk, and I'm fighting with the guy at the liquor store trying to buy booze after 2:00 in the morning. And I mean, I walk in cursive. I mean, I'm drunk all the time. I'm drunk every day. And so that started, I started reading these things, and where it talks about, the alcoholism engulfs the lives of all whose lives touch the supper, or however that says. It talks about the warped lives of blameless children. That one landed. I heard that, and I started identifying more and more in that same book. So the reason I share that is, please don't skim through that book. We got to study the book, man. Because I every time I read it, there are things in there that I think, man, that I don't remember seeing that. And I read the book a lot. Anyway, over those 18 years, it was in and out of jails and hospitals and treatment centers, and losing jobs for showing up drunk at 8 o'clock in the morning, and causing all those problems in my home, and making promises and breaking it, all of them, and just DUIs and treatment centers, and just how it is. And I would always, I would get 30 days and get drunk, and sometimes I get a couple of years to get drunk. And the longest I ever went, at one point I had stayed sober. I hesitate to call it sobriety, but I didn't drink for just short of 7 years. And during that 7 years, my life got really, really good. I had my marriage was obviously better because I'm not drunk all the time. I mean, my marriage was good, and I'm coaching my kids in sports, and I had started a business that was having some success, and my life got really good. And at the end of the 7 years, this wife of mine, I never saw her drunk. She would occasionally at a wedding or something have a toast or drink a glass of wine, but she didn't care about drinking, and out of respect for me, she just didn't really drink. But at this 7 year mark, one night we're going to a party, and on the way to this party, she said, "Hey, do you mind if I stop and get some wine coolers?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." And we stop and buy these things. They sell those things in a 4-pack? A 4-pack. So we stop and get our 4-pack of wine coolers and go to the party. And even worse, at the end of the night, there were 2 left in the 4-pack. And we put them in the trunk of the car and forgot about them. And a couple of weeks goes by, and my wife and I were sitting in our living room and had an argument, just like husbands and wives sometimes have. Just had an argument. And so it got a little heated, a little loud, so I decided to step outside and let things calm down. And I went out on my front porch and, just letting this argument kind of settle down. And while I was out there, I remembered the wine coolers in the trunk of the car. Just a passing thought. I'm 7 years sober. My life is good. I don't have any, no desire. I haven't had any desire to drink. I'm happy with my life. And the next thing I know, I'm over there putting my key in the trunk of that car, tipping back a wine cooler. 7 years gone, just like that. It's my experience. No sponsor, no steps, no service, no chance. No chance for a guy like me. And if you're new, we have a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous: pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I think blowing 7 years on a Bartles and James wine cooler is exactly what they mean by that. However, within about 15 minutes of that one wine cooler, I'm standing at the liquor store buying that big bottle of vodka, 18-pack of beer. 2 weeks from that Bartles and James wine cooler, I'm being stuffed into the back of a police car for DUI number 4. Because that's what happens when I take a drink. And over the next 3 years, I never was able. I always drank bad. It was always problems. But over the next 3 years, I drank like the only thing that I've ever heard that really describes it was by Dr. Bob. He called it that frightful drinking, because that's what I did for the next 3 years. I had that frightful drinking against my own will. My friend Kelly, I always love this. She says, drinking behind my own back. I love that saying, and it makes perfect sense to me. Making that promise over and over. Promise to my wife that today I won't do it. Today I'm not going to do it. Today's the day. 2 hours later, I'm drunk. Over and over, and it got really bad. And that DUI that I got, that 4th DUI, the business that I had started over that 7 year period was a towing business. My best customers were San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and Riverside County Sheriff's Department. I had contracts. Hard to get contracts with both of those agencies. And now I get that fourth DUI. I can't even drive my own trucks out there to do tows for them. And, to kind of wrap up how my drinking was there towards the end. So I go to court on that fourth DUI, and it's, court's 8:00 in the morning, and I show up in Redlands courthouse. I'm convicted for DUI number 4. Now, the problem drinker, the heavy drinker that we read about in the book, chances are they would never get to a fourth DUI. But if they did, absolutely, that's sufficient reason to stop. But what about the real alcoholic? I just got convicted of my fourth DUI. Terms of my probation are, I can't drink. I can't be under the influence of alcohol, in possession of, or even at a business whose primary function is the sale of alcohol. I left that courtroom at 8:30 that morning and drove right around the corner to the Tartan Bar because they make a really good Bloody Mary. The real alcoholic. Another thing that happened around that time, I had landed in Loma Linda Hospital after a bar fight, and I wound up, they found a liver condition that I had. It's a direct result of my drinking. Nothing else causes it. Liver condition because of my drinking. And I was wheeled into the emergency room, and I'll never forget this ER doctor, as they were wheeling me back there, she stood over me and she said, "If you don't soon stop drinking, you're going to die." And I was a pretty young man at the time, and she said, "If you don't soon stop drinking, you're going to die." And after they got me in the back, she came back in there a little while later, and she came in there again, and she said, "I was just out talking to your wife, and she said she really needs you, and you're not going to be here for her if you don't stop drinking." She emphasized it, and I was checked in. I was admitted to the hospital, and I was there for a few days while they treated me for this condition. And then I had a follow-up appointment with a regular doctor a couple days later, and to kind of see what I needed to do moving forward. And I went to that follow-up appointment. Again, it's like 8:30, 9:00 in the morning. I get to that appointment, and what the doctor told me was, explain that the liver has this ability to heal. And he said that, you're a young man and otherwise pretty good health. And if you're able to stop drinking, you'll probably never even know that you have this. That's what the doctor said. What I heard the doctor say was, "It's not that bad yet." I left that doctor's appointment and I drove to the nearest liquor store on the way home. And the next time my wife saw me, the same wife that had been sitting at my bedside in that hospital room, the next time she saw me when she got off of work, I was passed out on the couch with an empty bottle of whiskey next to me. And that kind of sums up how I drink. And during that period of time, my wife had found Al-Anon, and I always acknowledge the Al-Anons in the room, because I got to tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here looking at this screen and talking to you if it weren't for the example I saw right there in my own home of the 12 steps working in her life. I wouldn't be here tonight. I just know that. And because it was the example that I saw in her that really, my own shame and guilt really brought me to my knees. And there was a time soon after that hospital incident, when she was going to Al-Anon, I was getting to that place where I was getting pretty hopeless and desperate, and I was ready to go on and just drink myself to death. And I went to her one day and I said, "You're too good for this. Why don't you just leave me?" And I'll never forget her response. She looked at me with the sweetest look I've ever seen on a person's eyes. And she smiled at me and she said, "It's because I love you." And she started patting me on the center of the chest. And she said, "I know what's in here is good." She said, "I love you and I know what's in here is good." And then she said, "In my vows, I said in sickness and in health, and I'll never leave you for being sick." And then she went on to describe what it was like for her. She described what it was like to be married to an alcoholic like me. She talked about what it was like to get up in the morning and get 2 kids ready for school, get them fed, get them ready for school, make sure their homework was in their backpacks, and get them off to school, and then go to work and work all day, and then make sure the kids were home safe, and get them fed, get them bathed, help them with their homework, get them to their sports events, and get them put to bed. And then lay in our bed. A married woman lay there in the middle of the night, trembling, waiting for that knock at the door. She talked about how lonely that was for her. She talked about how scary it was. She said she would lay in that bed and rehearse how she was going to break the news to our kids someday what happened to their dad. She talked about the loneliness and the pain that she went through, but she reminded me, but I'll never leave you for being sick. And I didn't get sober immediately after that. I drank a short time after that. What my experience is that I could not. I tried, but I could not drink away those words. I, I, I couldn't drink away that look. Just couldn't do it. I tried. There's just not enough booze out there to drink that away. And so soon after that, I got sober. One of my favorite speakers and a good friend, I think, says it best. He says Larry T. He says his last drunk wasn't his worst one. It's just the one that drank away the debate. Because October 3rd was just another night of drinking like every night was. Yet I woke up on October 4th, 2006, and something had changed. I was able for the first time in my life to concede to my innermost self, deep down in my soul, that I have alcoholism. And that I have no chance. Of and by myself, I knew that I had no chance to overcome this. And I laid in that bed that morning, and it was a profound experience. It was, I don't know, I just remembered things that I had long since forgotten, just random things. And one of the things that I thought of that morning was there was a morning not so long before that I had woken up at home, still drunk and hung over from the night before, and I found this note slid under my bedroom door. And when I opened this note, in the writing of a child, it says, "Daddy, please stop drinking. I'm scared." That's my baby girl. Another thing I remember that morning, I was always very, very close to my grandmother. I adored my grandmother. She adored me. We were very close. And the thing about her, when I was a kid growing up in that trailer, it wasn't just that it was a trailer. It was filthy. It was filthy dirty. And sometimes the electricity would get shut off and it would stay off for months at a time. And there weren't meals on the table, and sometimes it was hard to find something to eat in that house. And it just wasn't a very good place for a kid to grow up. But grandma's house was always clean, and there was always food on the table, and she took really good care of me, and she never said no. I would call her and she would just come and get me, and she made me feel safe. And I was really close to her. And that morning, laying in that bed, I remembered what it felt like to see that same grandmother on the other side of a thick piece of glass talking to me on a filthy county phone. That woman had no business and never had been anywhere near one of those county facilities that she was at to visit me. And I just, that morning, I remembered seeing that heartbreak in her eyes. And I just kept thinking of all these random things, and I wanted desperately to stop drinking, and I just didn't know how. And I remember, and I hope I never forget this. I laid in that bed that morning, and I begged to God that I did not believe in. I begged him for one. Oh man, I begged him for one day sober. It just hit me how often I take this for granted, man. I try not to, but sometimes I take it for granted. I laid in that bed and I begged him for one day because it had been a while. It had been a long while since I'd had a day sober. And long story short, I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous. I got to speed up because I'm running out of time. What time do I stop? 10 till time? Okay. All right. 5 till. I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't drink that day. And then I didn't drink the next day. And then it was a week, and it was a month. And just like it always been my experience, when I'm able to stop and come here and sit with you, the circumstances of my life just get better. They just do. I stop going to jail. I stop, I start showing up to work. I stop breaking the vows in my marriage. My life, the circumstances just get better. I behave better. And that's what was happening this time. But this time, when I was 5 months sober, that wife of mine was diagnosed with cancer. And that's not how this is supposed to go, man. And long story short, I was 5 months sober when she was diagnosed, and when I was 9 months sober, she passed away. And I didn't take a drink. I'm a guy that takes a drink over every nickel and dime excuse you could ever come up with. And yet I walked through that experience and I didn't take a drink. And it was always my dream. My only dream was really to be a good husband and a good dad. I always wanted to be the kind of dad that I didn't have growing up. I dreamed about it. I dreamed about playing catch in the backyard with my son and taking him fishing and doing all these things as a dad and being that guy for my daughter, my daughter's hero, and being a good husband. That was always my dream. And believe me, I wanted to do it a lot longer than I got to do it. But because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to be a really good husband to my wife at the time that she needed me the most. That's why when Ty hits me up and asks if I can talk on Zoom or I get asked to speak, the answer is yes. You need me to stack the chairs, make the coffee, whatever you need me to do. If I can do it, I'm doing it. No hesitation. During that time, that 4-month period that I had the privilege, and I see it as a privilege today, of taking care of my wife. She didn't miss a single dose of medication. She was at every doctor's appointment. Her clothes were clean. Her sheets were clean. Anything she wanted or needed, she had. I sat at her bedside and I took really good care of my wife. And a guy like me, as much as I would always want to do that, I'm not capable of doing that. And I was able to do it because I came here and I sat with you. And, after my wife passed away, that was like my life crumbled after that, y'all. It crumbled. The best I could do was sit in 3 meetings a day and not drink. That business I had some success with, I had to shut the doors on it because I just could not. It was too much. I was grieving. I was overwhelmed. I was falling apart. And the best I could do was just sit in your meetings and stick around close with my sponsor and the friends I had made in AA and not drink and do the best I could to try to take care of my kids and walk them through this painful experience too. And so after about my life just started falling apart. I went completely broke. They foreclosed on my house. They repossessed my cars. My life crumbled. And after about a year, I'm ready to start trying to rebuild my life. And I get another job and I'm making decent money again. And my kids and I had rented a new place and starting to fix that up a little bit and start over, just start over. And so the only thing that I thought I needed in my life now is a relationship. Oh, not one of my better ideas. I met somebody, and Rolo here, my buddy on the screen, he knew her. He could tell you. We had this relationship. It was the sickest, most tumultuous, love-hate, even by AA standards, sickest relationship you have ever seen. We were very entertaining, I'll tell you that. And since I'm short on time, I'll just wrap it up by saying it was a 6-year relationship and I couldn't let go. In that 6 years, I was lied to, I was lied about, I was cheated on, and I walked on eggshells day in and day out. I'm going to meetings and I'm hearing speakers stand at podiums talk about living a life beyond their wildest dreams. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, and I'm dying. I am dying. And I'm going home to an environment that nobody should ever have to live in. But I couldn't let go. I just couldn't let go. And, we'd have one of those blow ups. That's it. Never going back. That's the end. I'm done forever. And then one more set of promises, one more set of apologies. And I go running back thinking this time it's going to be different. And it was never different. And as a result of that, my favorite saying has become, and I got little posters like this right here, let go or get dragged. That is my favorite saying. I've got like a bunch of these. I need to be reminded, let go or get dragged, because I was getting dragged really bad. And, I left that. I just woke up one day and I said, I didn't get sober to live like this. I was in so much pain. I was a shell of a human being. I really was. And I was riddled with pain. And I walked away. Now, our book says that resentments are the number one offender for the alcoholic. And I believe what the pages of the big book say. And I was riddled with resentments. I was riddled with resentments. But I can't tell you how much I never want to see that look in my kids' eyes ever again. Whatever I got to do to overcome these resentments, I'm going to do it. And I was trying. I tried. I did the pray for her for 2 weeks, whatever. I did all the stuff I was suggesting. I mean, I was losing weight. I couldn't sleep at night every waking moment. People at the meeting would ask me how I'm doing. I would tell them, like, be prepared for a long talk. And it's funny. I used to say, one time I was saying, when I went through that divorce, and my buddy corrected me and said, Trenton, you didn't go through that divorce. We all went through that divorce. But I'm writing these inventories and I'm going to my sponsor and I'm taking contrary action. I'm trying so bad to overcome these resentments, and I'm writing these inventories, and they kept telling me, look for that fourth column. And I'm like, I'm doing it. But what are they trying to get me to see? Like, I thought they were trying to get me to take responsibility for her cheating. And I'm like, how does that work? I didn't cheat. She did. How did I make her lie? I was trying to be a good husband. What is this? My part, we hear that all the time. I don't like that term, but my part, I couldn't understand it. And I kept writing these inventories. I don't know how many of them I wrote, but months go by and I'm still just full of these resentments. I'm toxic. And I'm writing one more inventory, and I got to the end, and when all of a sudden it hit me, I thought, oh my God, I was a grieving widower. I was in so much pain, in so much fear. Like, I was 36 years old when my wife passed away, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to raise these kids alone? And only 36, but I've envisioned myself dying a lonely old man. It's just full of grief, overwhelmed. How am I going to do this? And she came along and made it all feel better for a minute. Let's be clear, the red flags were all there from day one. I painted them green and went forward, went with it, and all of a sudden I realized they weren't trying to get me to take responsibility for her bad behavior. All they wanted me to see is where I had made decisions based on self that placed me in a position to be hurt. I made decisions based from a place of fear, based on self that placed me in a position to be hurt. And all of a sudden, that resentment that was killing me, literally killing me, started melting away. And it didn't go away overnight, but it started getting better. I'll tell you, it's been about, I don't know, 10, 11 years since I've seen her. And don't get me wrong, I don't care to go meet her for lunch. But I can tell you that today I have absolutely no ill feelings towards her whatsoever. If I were to see her on the street today, I would wish her well and I would mean it. That day was never going to happen. That day was never going to happen. And I genuinely hope she's doing well. And that just blows me away. So now that I've scared all the newcomers out of AA and we're almost out of time, there's a happy ending to this, I promise. Because in the last 17 years, there are so many things in my life that I so wouldn't want to miss. And I'm one drink away from missing all of them. I'm one drink away from missing that day that I got to walk my little girl down the aisle at her wedding. One drink away from missing it. Just a few months after my daughter got married, she came over to my house and gave me this gift bag, and I opened it up and there was a card, and I started reading the card, and at the bottom it said, "Congratulations, Grandpa." She was letting me know I was going to be a grandfather, and when I read that, I thought of my dear friend and one of my heroes in AA was Patty O. And I thought about how she would always share from the podium about being in the room when her grandson Eden was born. And when she looked into his eyes, she was looking into the eyes of God. And I love that story, how she told it. And so when I read that card, I'm like, 9 months from now, I'm going to be looking into the eyes of God. I couldn't wait. And 9 months later, my phone rings. My daughter said, "Dad, it's time." And I beat her to the hospital. And I was the first person to hold Logan after his parents. And when they put him in my arms, I'm ready for that patio moment. And I look into his eyes and I look into his eyes. I mean, they're beautiful. Don't get me wrong. He's got great eyes, but it's not the eyes of God. And I was really grateful. It was a beautiful moment. But at the same time, I felt this disappointment, and the disappointment wasn't in him. It was in me. I thought, how come Patio gets to have that spiritual, that thing that I don't seem to have? Why do other people have it and I can't seem to find it? And for a brief second, I thought Patio lied. And then so I'm struggling with this, and I kept looking at him, hoping that it was going to happen. And then I just happened to glance over at my daughter, and when I looked into my daughter's, when I looked into my daughter's eyes, I was looking right square into the eyes of God. The way she was, she looked like she was glowing. The way that she was looking at me, so happy, so at peace. Just looking at me standing there holding her son, and I looked back at Logan, and I was looking into the eyes of God. And I remember in that moment, I looked up and I said, thank you, God, for putting me right here, right now. That my daughter didn't have to call some bar looking for me or hoping that I would be there. She knew I'd be there. She knew I'd be there. My life is full of those experiences in the last 17 years, and I wish I'd have gotten sober sooner so I could share more of them, but a couple more, and then I'll be quiet. Another one, my grandmother, I mentioned my grandmother earlier, how close we were, and when I was about 2 years sober, I realized, man, my grandma's in her 90s, and she's getting older, and she can't see too good anymore. And time's going to run out, and I just wanted to spend all the time I could with her. And so my kids and I started picking grandma up once a week and taking her to dinner. And the first night we did that, we got to the restaurant and we got out, and I just walked over and I helped my grandma up on the sidewalk. And she couldn't see too good. I didn't want her to trip, so I just reached out and I helped her up on the sidewalk. I didn't think anything of it. I was just helping my grandma up on the sidewalk, and when I did that, she squeezed my hand and she looked up at me, and she said, whenever you're around, I feel safe. Uh, Same woman that made me feel safe as a little, oh man. Uh, Same woman that made me feel safe as a kid. And I just thought, man, I just thought of that comparison of seeing her on the other side of that thick piece of glass, and now she's standing there telling me just my presence makes her feel safe. Man, the opportunities in Alcoholics Anonymous are I just man, if you're new, please don't miss it. Please don't miss it, because I promise you those moments lie ahead for you. I promise you they do. If you get in the middle of this thing and just take some action and listen to that sponsor that it doesn't know what they're talking about, and do these steps that aren't going to fix it, and pray to that God that isn't listening. My experience is this thing works, and it works far beyond what I could have ever imagined. My life is full of those experiences, and a couple more. I love that I have that experience with my grandma, that drunk Trenton and that sober Trenton experience. And with my daughter, I have a similar experience. I told you about that note that she wrote begging me to stop drinking when she was a little girl. Well, when I was about 7 years sober, she wrote a letter. And this one was a nomination for a Father of the Year award for the Inland Empire, which is a big area, Riverside, San Bernardino counties. And a lot of men were nominated for this based on these letters written by our kids. And in that letter, she didn't hide the fact that I was an alcoholic. She talked about that struggle. She talked about how scary it was and how difficult it was. And then she said, but then he met these people. She talked about how I came here with you. And oh man, she talked about how I coached her in sports. And she talked about how she watched me take care of her mom in her dying days. And she said, he's the one person I always know I can count on. And she just said these beautiful things about me, and she talked about the kind of grandfather I was to her kids, and in that letter she described me as her hero, man. She described me as her hero. And it got to the end of this thing, and people voted based on these letters, and she called me and she said, hey Dad, you won first place. I'm one drink away from missing it. And I got to tell you guys, if I didn't get anything else out of Alcoholics Anonymous, if the only thing I got was that letter from my daughter, I could never repay you. It's a beautiful letter. When my son about 5.5 years ago was getting married, and he came over to my house and he handed me a gift bag, and I opened it up, and he had a plaque made, and on this plaque he had a picture of him and I when he was small, and a current picture, and in the writing it said, the only thing better than having you as my dad is having you as my best man. I got to be my son's best man at his wedding. Oh, I'm trying to think how to wrap this up. I I ended up with 5 grandsons, and every grandson I mean, I love every one of them. I adore my grandkids. Anybody that knows me knows that. Uh, but I kept asking, what about a granddaughter? I mean, 5 grandsons, no girls. I want a granddaughter. My daughter has always been a daddy's girl, and I just picture how it would be with a granddaughter. I want a granddaughter. Kept asking, wasn't getting a granddaughter. My son 2 years ago moved to Kentucky, and I'd go back and visit him and his family. And last December, on December 13th, I found myself sitting in a hospital in Corbin, Kentucky. And one more time, one more time, I found myself looking into the eyes of God. And this time they were on the face of Carly, my granddaughter, my first granddaughter. I'm one drink away from missing it. I don't say that because it's a catchy little phrase and I just like the sound of it. I repeat it a lot because I am crystal clear on the fact that I'm one drink away from missing everything good and decent in my life. I'm one drink away. So I stay in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new, I encourage you to come all the way in and sit all the way down. Get in the middle of this thing. And the last thing I'll say, when I was in the grips of my illness at the lowest point I'd ever been in my life, the person that loved me more than anybody ever had or probably ever will, looked me in the eyes and patted me on the center of the chest and said, what's in here is good. I don't think that's just true for me. I think it's true for all of us. And it was the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous that gave me a little glimpse of what she could always see. Thank you guys so much for having me.